Welcome to the Newsweek lead, listeners. The license to operate the Lotto is about to change hands to Azarrah Holdings, not without claims of alleged misconduct by those left out of the ultra-lucrative tender. The man steering that outfit is one Moses Tembe, a figure who's in business with at least three others precariously close to Deputy President Paul Mashatile. So much so, Tembe even got a personal invite to this year's opening of Parliament, reports our News 24 investigative journalist, Azarrah.
We are asking for some accountability here. We are trying to force those interested parties to explain these relationships publicly. And I've said it before, but we know how this works. We know from state capture, and we know from the Zondo Commission how it works. And it's often always through these types of networks. And this is one of South Africa's biggest contracts, awarded to people who then quite conveniently go into business with politically connected people.
In our trending topic, which South African retailer is streaks ahead so far with its self-checkout tills? News 24's William Breder tested them. And later in the show, the early 90s SA democracy negotiations looked grim on this very day in SA history. In Rauby's pointless Braai quiz, in which obscure US state did two military fighter jets collide above an air show this past weekend? I'll give you that answer a little later. My name's Graeme Robenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African Story. Moving to our top story today, well, she's been hot on the trail of the Lotto licensing saga for several years now. It's the brilliant Azarrah, a member of our Josie-based News 24 investigations team. How was your weekend, Azarrah? Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me. I think it was all right. Just a bit of stress over this piece we're going to speak about, but all good.
Yeah. Of course, there always comes questions after we hit publish. Let's start here, and I think let's just build the context before we get to the crux or the main impetus of your current piece for News 24. Where do we stand with the current lottery license handover process between Azarrah and Azarrah Holdings? Before I even started reading your latest reporting, that sat in the back of my mind. I mean, it's a massive deal. 8 years that Azarrah will now be the official Lotto license holder in South Africa. They start now in June, is that right?
Yes, that's right. We are exactly 2 weeks away from the handover, which is on the 1st of June. I've been seeing that Azarrah on social media have been advertising sort of media events to brief everybody on their sort of operation plan and what they're going to do. And they've really been punting that lately. But if we go back a little bit, Azarrah Holdings was issued that 12-month temporary license, and that expired on the 31st of May. And now Azarrah had actually launched that urgent application, which was dismissed, and allowing Azarrah to go ahead with its preparations. So that's where we stand.
Yeah, and to just catch up, our readers and our listeners, our subscribers, Azarrah cried foul over what? The bidding process for the license itself. It wasn't happy with how everything sort of went in terms of that bidding committee for the actual license.
Yeah, so Azarrah challenged that RFP process, and highlighted a number of alleged irregularities. That included changing the score midway, a lack of independent oversight, premature negotiations with Azarrah, and interestingly, Azarrah's financial readiness, saying that it, didn't have the money ring-fenced to actually run the operations. And then a number of other companies also launched court cases that challenged the award based in part on the political connections that we ventilated last time. So the urgent application was dismissed, but the main review is still pending. So it's not over yet.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. That's why we are sort of unsure at the moment. But Competitions Minister Parks Tower has been quite defensive throughout. I think is probably the correct term to use there. He's been sort of emphatic that everything's been done above board. I mean, it's a massive license. It's super lucrative. I mean, we're talking about billions in terms of the stewardship, right?
Absolutely. Well, so everyone involved has denied anything untowards, and so Mashatile's family, Mashatile says his family is allowed to do business with government, and Minister Tau did make the undertaking to Parliament that he would go and investigate these issues, and has subsequently said that the investigation found no irregularities, and that it sort of stems from the narrowness of the regulations of what can be deemed political interest.
And if you're wondering about how our Deputy President sort of filters into what Azarrah just sort of responded there to, is obviously previously, I mean, if you've been an avid lead listener, go back to the 23rd of June 2025. This is the first time Azarrah and I have ever spoken on record about anything. And that was entitled The Lead, Mashatile, his sister-in-law, and the 180 billion rand Lotto deal. Can we quickly just go back to that for a quick hot second as the last piece of our imported context puzzle, please, Azarrah? And there you found that Kumo Bakhatsu, who is our Deputy President Paul Mashatile's sister-in-law, has a stake in Bellamont Gaming, which is among the key shareholders of Sizakaya, which is the new lottery license holder, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. Bogatso is the twin sister of Humile Mashatile, is a co-director in Bellamont Gaming with Moses Tembe, and that has a share in Sizakaya Holdings, which was awarded as the new Lotto operator. That's exactly it.
Right. So she's hit somewhat of the jackpot, and this is what sort of set the cat amongst the pigeons, right? And why Minister Parks Tau, had launched that probe to sort of try and clear the air. Okay, so he's saying, everything's sort of cleared now, but, your reporting takes things a little bit further, and we're going to get into that now. How influential is this gentleman, Moses Tembe? He's the head of Sizakaya. How influential is he throughout everything we've spoken thus far?
So Moses Tembe is the key cog that is connecting everyone that we have spoken about, or that I have spoken about, in terms of the, I would just compel readers to go back to Amabungane's piece, Ties That Bind, that really lays out the network around Sizakaya and Moses Tembe and Sandile Zungu. He's the key cog in this network. He is the one that sort of connects everyone in Mashatile's network together. For example, I mean, we were at Amabungane, we were told that it was him and Zungu that decided to go after the license. It was by virtue of former Chief Executive, Adapt IT Chief Executive Spusha Balala's alleged engagement to Bogatso, that she went into business with Tembe. And then there's the historical ties between Tembe and Mashatile, with Mashatile having allegedly visited quite frequently Mashatile's palatial Bellamont home in Durban North. He is a very, very key figure in the network, and he is the face of Sizakaya.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So now, Tembe is, as per your reporting and what you've managed to uncover thus far, is in actual fact in business with three separate but seemingly interlinked business associates. Who are these three business associates, and how do they sort of link back?
These three associates, and that does include Kumo Bogatso. The three of them are all trustees of one of Paul Mashatile's family foundations. It's called the Paul and Humile Mashatile Foundation, and it helps autistic children receive support, or neurodivergent children receive support. The three of them are trustees as of 2023 of that foundation. And we have laid out a sort of timeline of the three of them, including one of Mashatile's oldest friends, Reggie Kukama. The timeline compared to the announcement of the Lotto award and when the three of them went into business with Tembe, not having pre-existing business interests before that, as far as I could tell. Yes, so just a very interesting timing and order of events.
Okay, so then your reporting and how you understood everything, you had to file a PIA application. Now, we as journalists call it a PIA application. How difficult is it to do a PIA application to those listening that would probably be, quite curious about this process? And obviously, we would have to put an argument forward that this was in the public's best interest in terms of our reporting, right?
Yeah, it's not hard to do a PIA application. It's hard to actually get the information following that. It takes about 30 days after you fill out a form and you sort of give it to the government department to motivate why you want access to this information. It's supposed to take 30 days. I, for example, earlier this year have filed a PIA application with the Department of Trade and Industry for records relating to this exact contract, and I'm still waiting. But for some reason, the presidency, it actually took 30 days, so that was quite surprising. The PIA was for a list of the guests that Deputy President Paul Mashatile invited to this year's SONA, and I did that exactly because I saw some interesting people that were connected to the Deputy President at SONA. And when I got that list, it just confirmed my suspicions, because none other than Moses Tembe was on that list.
Sure. Okay. Tembe not the only one, right? So could we go through just some of the other names that you saw on this list, which otherwise would not have seen the light of day if you did not file that PIA application?
Yeah, so it was another of Paul Mashatile's oldest friends and a founding member of what's colloquially named as the Alex Mafia. His name is Bridgman Sitole. You readers might remember his name from a court case against News 24, where he tried to stop us from using that term, Alex Mafia, but that case was dismissed. There was also Moses Tembe and his wife. There was also an interesting Moses Tembe and his wife and a man named Zakele Mkhize, who is the other man that has gone in, that tried to go into business with Moses Tembe, and who is a trustee of the foundation that we just spoke of. And then you have people like Lunga Nwana, previously connected to Humile Mashatile's now deceased husband, as well as Brett Keble. Mail and Guardian previously reported on how Brett Keble channeled money to the ANC through Lunga. He, in response to our questions, he didn't respond to our questions, only to confirm that he did attend SONA.
If you're wondering, hey, who was Brett Keble again? Of course, he was killed in Johannesburg, one of South Africa's most preeminent mining magnates and businessmen. Yeah. And of course, journalist colleagues like Mandy Wiener did absolutely sterling work investigating Brett Keble and his past. Just as a side note there, if you're wondering, and her book on the matter makes for seminal reading in that regard. Okay. Yeah. You found other conduits between Tembe and others, and one of the things that linked back to it, and it's such a funny thing to me because it's and such an old thing of a bygone era, because I actually don't know many people these days who actually use post office box numbers. But that's how you linked Tembe with these others, through a Durban North post office box number. That I find very interesting.
Yes, so there is a company that Tembe and Mr. Mkhize, who I just mentioned as the person who was on the SONA guest list, there was a company that they formed and called Dela Logics. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And yes, the way that I found this connection is, looking at the companies that were registered to this particular PO box address in Durban North, that a lot of Moses Tembe's Bellamont companies were also registered to, including Bellamont Gaming, and another company called Crescendo Management Services, which has a stake in Gold Rush Holdings, which has a 50% stake in Sizekaya. And so that was a red flag for me. in his response to our questions, Mr. Mkhize sort of just said that they tried to go into business together, him and Mr. Tembe, but it didn't really work out, and the company is dormant, doesn't make any money, doesn't operate or do any business anymore. And the connection with the PO box was because Moses Tembe is the only person who has a PO box address still.
Right.
But so it didn't really, there was a contradiction for me there because it's registered as his personal PO box address. I don't, and it's, you know, it's really, it's just a postal address. So that, you know, there was a sort of contradiction there for me. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it brings in the connections a lot closer, does it not? Let's sort of bring it to this, right? Now, you know, the lead listener would be listening up to this point and going, you know, so what? Let's remind them, right, that Moses Tembe, you know, heads up Sizakaya Holdings, you know, which has a stake in Bellamont Gaming, which is now, you know, undertaken the Lotto license. Yeah, he's on the official guest list to the State of the Nation address as, you know, invited by the Deputy President, which you've succinctly revealed, and the Deputy President's sister-in-law has a stake in Bellamont Gaming. I mean, that's it. That's essentially what your reporting is tied together, is it not? Do I have that correctly?
I'm essentially trying to show that it's not just one coincidental business relationship, you know, what we're talking about now. It's not just one coincidental business relationship. It's multiple connections that are now leading back to Mashatile's inner circle. It shows us how political access could possibly translate into business advantage,
Yes.
especially when we look at the timing with the announcement of the Lotto contract.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better than that. And then lastly, you do mention this particular person in your reporting as well. And I just sort of wanted to figure out how he forms part into the picture, because he kind of like stands out a little bit with a somewhat sort of like foreign name and surname, Fernando Achafrau or Akafrau. Who is this gentleman? How does he fit into the whole picture with regards to the Mashatile Foundation as well?
He's a very interesting figure. He is a trustee of the foundation as well, along with Kukama and Mkhize. He is, if you remember last year, there was a whole lot of fuss about Fikile Mbalula, ANCSG Fikile Mbalula, arriving to Robben Island on that very expensive yacht.
Yes.
And it later came out that this Fernando Akafrau was the one who donated the yacht for Fikile to use, for Fikile Mbalula to use. He, subsequently after that, the ANC said actually Akafrau donated the yacht to the ANC and not directly to Mr. Mbalula. But he is a known ANC donor, a very politically connected figure as well.
Yeah, and he's on the foundation with the Mashatiles, which I think is also important to point out at this point, right?
And his relationship with Mr. Mashatile goes back decades, to like the early 2000s when Mail and Guardian reported on how Mashatile, who was an MEC of Gauteng at the time, or if I might stand corrected, he was not deputy president at the time, was making use of the Akafrau's company's very palatial home in Frenay, and how it was actually the DA's Alan Windy who had spotted Mashatile using the house, and very interesting story to go back and read. But Akafrau told the Mail and Guardian that he actually met Mashatile through Sithole. So yes, the connection goes back decades.
I think Alan spotted them in the Southern Cape, and I know that Alan is from Knysna, our current Premier of the Western Cape. And he's a very prolific figure within the DA in the Knysna circle. So from a political perspective, for him to happen upon that is very curious indeed, and one for the books, eh? Right of reply from the Deputy President himself. You sent questions through to his spokesperson, Mr. Keith Causer. What was his official response here in terms of the Tembe connection being a guest at SONA 2026 and the obvious connections to Kumo Bakhatso as well?
Yes, so interesting thing that happened after we sent Keith Causer the request for comment is that we then got the very same request for comment sent back to us by somebody in the Mashatile network. So the questions that we sent sort of seem to have done the rounds. So that's quite interesting.
Very.
But yes, Mr. Causer told us that the Deputy President doesn't take part in these commercial arrangements and sort of reiterated the integrity of that Lotto license process and then sort of called the reporting a malicious attempt, malicious insinuations to impugn him, is the direct quote. Tembe, also just for the record, refused to answer News 24's questions because he said it had nothing to do with the Lotto.
Okay. Let's end here. I mean, how difficult is it really to sit down sometimes? Do you get headaches? Do you want to bash your head against the wall because you feel like you're not making any inroads here? Or perhaps you feel like sometimes you're grasping at straws. I mean, not every day is a good day when you get to hit send on your final draft. I mean, there's obviously many existential Tuesdays down the line where you're just not getting answers and you don't feel like you're getting to the outcome that perhaps from a journalistic perspective is required in order for you to hit send.
But that's why the facts need to speak for themselves, because you do get these very aggressive responses to your questions and your due diligence questions, I might add. Very aggressive responses, often threatening legal action, often sent through a lawyer's letter. We are asking for some accountability here. Do you know what I mean? We are trying to force those interested parties to explain these relationships publicly. And I've said it before, but we know how this works. We know from state capture and we know from the Zondo Commission how it works. And it's often always through these types of networks. And this is one of South Africa's biggest contracts awarded to people who then quite conveniently go into business with politically connected people. So in that sense, it's just a matter of constantly keeping an eye on it. And although, writing a story about connections and just to sort of, look at this network, look at these developments that are happening in this network. Although there's no sort of smoking gun, it's important to keep this in the public eye, to keep the pressure on and to keep these developments in the public.
I can't wait to see what you do next. That's Azarrah Karim, award-winning member of our News 24 investigations team based out of our Randburg newsroom. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179. Trending topic.
Moving to our trending topic, can't wait for this conversation. Self-checkout tills are slowly becoming a new toy for South African shoppers to play with. And News 24 business journalist William Brederode is among the few of us to try them all thus far. William, how's it?
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Graeme.
Okay, we're not going to tell everybody who's the best retailer in terms of their self-checkout till, right? We're going to keep it till the end.
They're a little bit, they're sort of targeting slightly different ideas, but we'll discuss all of them and then go from there.
Right, so 3 major retailers in South Africa today have self-checkout tills. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's Pick n Pay now, and Woolies, as well as the ShopRite group. Is that right?
That's
Okay,
it.
Let's begin with ShopRite. Of course, we need to distinguish now between Checkers and, ShopRite. Checkers is now seen as a bit more of an uppity brand these days. Where is the self-checkout located within this big brand? Which store? And how user-friendly is it?
2 different chains. So the one is the Unique Clothing Brand stores, which is a Checkers brand. And over there, it's like magic, Graeme. You drop your clothing item into a box and it is rung up. That's how it works. So it uses something called RFID, radio frequency identification. And I'll be honest, when I went, there was a staff member on hand because I was so blown away by this thing that they helped me out a little bit. But that's the technology, and that's how it works at Unique. They don't have human tills.
Wow.
So it's all these self-checkout systems. The other one, which I'm sure people heard about because it was such a big story last year, is the smart trolleys,
yes,
which they've piloted at initially Checkers Brackenfell, and then it moved to Constantia as well.
Because ShopRite's headquarters are in Brackenfell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's like where a lot of their innovations come out of. It's got all the bells and whistles, Graeme. It's you sign in with your Checkers loyalty card. This thing has got a map which shows you around the store. It's got a live running feed of your shop so you can see how much you're spending as you go along. It's got a spin to win game when you log in.
Sure.
You scan your item at the front of the trolley, drop it in, and then it makes sure there's weight at the bottom, and it makes sure that the thing you dropped in is the same weight as the thing you scanned.
And that's to not jig the system, I'm
That's
assuming.
to not jig the system. And I tried to jig the system. So I dropped my wallet in there on purpose. And I can't quite remember what the screen says, but it basically tells you off and says, get that foreign object out of there. You know?
So basically said, this journalist is poor. There's nothing in this wallet.
Yeah, exactly. So that's still in the pilot phase. At some point, I reached out to ShopRite to see how it was going earlier this year. They said that in December, the checkout process was 75% faster using the trolley than the standard tills, which you would expect because you've done all your scanning already by the time you get to the pay point. Then once you get to the pay point, it's all linked to your 60/60 account. So you hit pay, you get a notification on your phone, enter your one-time PIN, and you're styling. So the smart trolley is fun. It's fun.
It sounds very intuitive. Okay, Woolies. Now, full disclosure, lead listeners, William and I often frequent the very nice, albeit a little bit small for my liking, the Woolies here at the foreshore, just opposite the Media 24 building, and next to the Take-A-Lot headquarters here as well. I noticed in the last couple of months they'd set up the self-checkout till, and I've used it myself once or twice. It's easy.
It's extremely easy, and we are in a privileged position because this is the only store in the country with a self-checkout till that Woolies have rolled out, unless they've expanded in the last couple of months without my knowledge. It's, as you say, it's a very simple system. So there's no scale. It's not like there's a boom that you walk through. When I've been there's been a staff member on hand to assist, but it's basically scan, hit pay, get out of there. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. And I think to explain that from Woolworths' side, they said this is a trial. They're interested to see what data comes out of this process, and they're going to decide what to do after that. So very simple system, very easy to use, but no bells and whistles, really.
Yeah. And I thought something that you pointed out in your weekend reporting, which I also experienced, is that there's no one really at the door to check whether or not you've paid or not, or no surveillance system, which you've already sort of alluded to, no boom or anything else like that, that would stop potential, thieves.
That's it. There's normally been somebody nearby. I actually worry that people might either over or underpay accidentally. Because without a scale, there's no way of matching what you've scanned and what you're taking. So, yeah, it strikes me as a bit of a concern in this country that there aren't those built-in safety mechanisms. But let's see where Woolworths goes with it. I mean, it's early days for them.
Right, before we get to Pick and Pay, and I thought we'd just quickly speak about this. I quite like the thing about, because it's the only one I've tried out of the three that we're talking about. With Woolies, it doesn't shout at you, whereas in the UK, I know you've gone to the UK many times in your life, William, the ones that, like, for example, Co-op and M&S, some of them shout at you, like, scan now, pay now. And it's just like, it can get very overwhelming. My wife, she doesn't do well with very loud noises. So some of the times when we're in Co-op, she's like, I can't do this. Like, I need to go stand outside.
I don't think any of us need to be shouted at by a till. There's enough going on in our lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so simple that they haven't added anything like that. And let's hope long may it continue that the tills are polite to us.
Now, Pick and Pay is the last installment here and the latest to enter into this foray. They've got self-checkout tills. Is it at all their stores, or is it only like one of their flagship stores?
They haven't fully set out. It's definitely not all the stores. So I went to the one, I believe it's called the Nieuwenbosch Square in Stellenbosch, new centre, where they've rolled it out. And the Pick and Pay CEO, Sean Summers, said it's not a massive rollout. So it's not clear to me exactly how many stores have been kitted out, but it seemingly is early days.
Yeah, and how was your experience with that? Is it similar to Woolies, similar to ShopRite?
It's more on the Woolies end, so more for a small shop, 10 items or less. And it did have the bells and whistles. So you put down your basket on the left, scan it across, and put it down on a scale. And it was instant once you dropped it down, as good as instant, and you can move on. Which seemed to me like a good idea, to have that scale there to make sure you can match what you're scanning and what you're taking with you. If I had to be super harsh, I'd say the scale area was quite small. So by the time I dropped my rusks and my...
he loves his rusks, people.
I'm a rusk guy. And knickknacks, have to do knickknacks. My scale was starting to fill up, and I could see another shopper struggling with that. Anyway, not the biggest deal. And then what I thought was clever is you finish, it prints out your slip. You can pay with either a card or a QR code. So it's seemingly compliant with the QR code companies. You can also buy alcohol because there's somebody there to check, whereas at the Woolies one, you can't buy alcohol.
Oh, really?
Okay. And then on your slip, there's a little barcode. And you scan the barcode. There's an entry. There's like a boom gate, which you can't get past without scanning unless you want to jump it, which we're not encouraging. You scan your barcode there, and the gates open sesame, which is, if you're anything like me, it's quite nice to watch those gates open. So I thought the Pick and Pay system was more like the Woolies one because it's meant for those smaller shops, whereas the smart trolley is for bigger shops, in my mind, because it's a little bit of a process to get going. And then, the unique one, it's a clothing store, so it's a bit of a different ball game. But I suppose same sort of WhatsApp group.
Yeah. Okay, so who's the clear winner here in William's eyes?
I don't think I'm going to crown a winner. I'll say this. I'll say I had the most fun using the smart trolley. Smart trolley's a lot of fun. And if I had to pick which system I thought was the best model to roll out across the country, I'd say Pick and Pay. To me, it so unique. It's a bit unfortunate for them. It's a different category, clothing. So the RFID scanner, I don't think is going to work for all products at a retail store. But the Pick and Pay system was quick. Once I'd done it once, I see no reason why I wouldn't get the hang of it forever after. The boom gate seems like a logical safety feature to me, and the scale is a very logical check on to make sure you're not crooking the system.
Yeah.
So it struck me as secure, easy enough to use, kind of fun being your own cashier, and arguably quicker if I knew what I was doing, which I will the next time.
Yeah. Very quickly, in a nutshell, to end off, out of those three major retailers, Do we know what their timelines or, the information gathering research stages that they're in at the moment, where they're sitting on in terms of final implementation for a possible sort of across the board approach to this? I think that's probably the big question everybody's sort of thinking about at this point.
I don't think any of them have communicated that. And if I extrapolated and thought through it, I actually don't think any of them would have decided that. It's still such a new concept in South Africa that I think the only logical approach to it is to test it out, see what happens, see how it's received, gather some data, and then make that decision about a wider rollout. So I think it's important to stress this. Woolworths definitely is still at the dipping their toe into the water phase. Unique has gone for it. Checkers with a trolley, they're only at 2 stores and are still testing the waters. And Pick n Pay, it seems like a limited rollout. So we're still early days here. We don't know when it's going to roll out across the country. And you can understand that approach.
Yeah. I don't mind them. I kind of liked them when I was in the UK, but for the most part, you do miss the South Africanisms of interacting with somebody when you're paying for things. And I can't help but feel in a country with such high unemployment, and especially youth unemployment, where a lot of people, the only chance that they're going to get as their first job is being a cashier, I worry that it's going to, dent, our job offering even further, when we should be in a state of thinking, how do we make more jobs in South Africa? And I'm worried about that. That's just to end off.
That's the key point. And unions have raised that point in the past, and I think will continue here. So that's another key factor here.
But a mix of having maybe 1 or 2 self-checkout points, but then still having your usual cashiers. I mean, that's a possibility. It's a hybrid approach that I think could work.
If they can convince us that it's not affecting employment at their stores, I think that would be great. But let's see how convincing that is if this takes off.
Do you love doing stories like this?
Oh, it's fun. It's fun to get out there and go and try it. And I like little gizmos and seeing how they set up the systems. So, maybe I don't have a high enough level of what fun is, but I found it fun.
And that's all that matters. That's William Breder. He's a top journalist here in our News 24 business team. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And finally,
Ending off now with On This Day in SA History, that's courtesy the SA History Online database. The early 90s SA democracy negotiations looked somewhat grim on this day, the 18th of May 1991. The ANC had penned a letter at the time to the last apartheid president, F.W. de Klerk, warning to suspend transition talks unless the current violence seen across the country came to a halt. The party demanded the release of all outstanding political prisoners, a ban on anyone carrying firearms in public, as well as the axing of security cabinet ministers Adrian Vlok and Magnus Malan. De Klerk agreed to impose fresh restrictions on public firearm use, whilst promising to follow up on the remaining measures. He stopped short, though, of firing the 2 ministers. That's until their demise was later sealed with the Inkatha-gate scandal. That's following revelations about the Army's death squad involvement. Ultimately, as historians view it, though, the ANC stalemate was more of a temporary means to remove any unnecessary obstacles in its ongoing but difficult talks with the National Party. And moving now to Rauby's Pointless Bike Quiz, and we asked at the beginning of the show, in which obscure US state did 2 military fighter jets collide above an air show this past weekend? That answer is Idaho. 4 people air ejected once the jets latched onto each other in midair, as seen on video, before plummeting to the ground. Somehow they all survived unscathed, says the US Navy. Needless to say, though, a major investigation is now underway. The air show was also immediately cancelled. The accident would have cost, based on my estimates for a pair of Growler jets, to the tune of more than 2 billion rand. Ouch, what an expensive accident that is. Thanks so much for tuning into The Lead. It's not going anywhere. It's going to remain a permanent fixture of the News 24 podcast offering. We're currently coming out twice a week. whilst I'm also busy with our brand new weekly bulletin called News 24's Unread. Our debut edition came out just this Saturday morning. I hope you enjoyed it. It's essentially 10 minutes of the top stories from the week if you missed the daily headlines. I'd love to hear a little bit more of your feedback, so drop us a comment below. Otherwise, you can drop us a mail at thelead@24.com. I'll see you again on Wednesday at 7 p.m. for the next edition of The Lead. And until then, my name's Graeme, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll have The Lead.